Good morning, everybody. This is Suraj Singh Engineer again, back to you. And because last video broke, so I'm back to you again. नमस्कार, मैं सूरज सिंह भारत से बोल रहा हूँ, इंडिया से. And this is now 4:40 a.m. and 1st December 2021, Wednesday. Last video broke due to signals failure suddenly, and I'm back again. I was talking about this file, and that is here. I was talking about this file, and that is Qatar General Specifications, and we were talking about third party insurance. You can see on this file before commencing execution of works, and also I think indemnity I indemnity by PWD or PW or client, that client shall save harmless and indemnify contractor from and against all claims, all claims all claims, you can say, demands, proceedings, damages, costs, charges and expenses in respect of matters referred to in this provision. And of course, third party insurance, before commencing execution of works, contractor shall, in joint names of client and contractor, insure against loss, whatever loss or every loss, damage or injury which may occur to certain property, every property, including client's property, or to every person, including client's personal, by or arising out of execution of works or temporary works, or in carrying out contract otherwise than due to matters referred to. Minimum amount of third party insurance. Minimum amount of third party insurance. Such insurance shall be effected with an insurer and in terms approved by client, and which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld, and for at least amount stated in tender, and contractor shall, whenever required, produce to engineer or engineer's representative policy or policies of insurance and receipts for payment of current premiums. Accident or injury to workmen. Accident and injury to workmen, client shall not be liable for or in respect of whatever damages or compensation payable at law in or injury resulting from certain act or default of client. Client agents or servants and contractors shall indemnify and keep indemnified client against all such damage claims, whatever claims, demands, proceedings, costs, charges, and expenses whatsoever in respect thereof or in relation इंश्योरेंस अगेंस्ट एक्सीडेंट टू वर्कमैन. हम बातें बीमा की कर रहे हैं. बीमा जो अपनी सुरक्षा के लिए, सामान की सुरक्षा के लिए, काम की सुरक्षा के लिए और ये कवर करने के लिए किसी भी चीज़ को, वो बीमा जिसको इंश्योरेंस कहते हैं, इंश्योरेंस अगेंस्ट एक्सीडेंट्स, घटना हादसों के इंश्योरेंस के लिए, कोई भी घटना घटी, कोई भी हमारा वर्कर उसमें आ गया, contractor shall insure against such liability with an insurer approved by client and shall continue such insurance during whole of time that whoever persons are employed by contractor on works and when required produce to engineer or engineer's representative such policy of insurance and receipt for payment of premium, current premium, provided always that in receipt of every person employed by subcontractor, contractor's obligation to insure as aforesaid under this subclause shall be satisfied but contractor shall require such subcontractor to produce to engineer failure to insure. अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्टर इंश्योर नहीं करता है तो क्या करें? If contractor fails to effect and keep in force insurance, if contractor fails to effect and keep in force insurance referred to hereof or some other insurance which it may be required to effect under terms of contract. In that case and in whatever such case, client may effect and keep in force every such case, every such insurance and pay such premium or premiums as may be necessary for that purpose and from time to time deduct amounts so paid by client as aforesaid from whatever money is due or which may become due to contractor or recover same as that due from contractor. यदि कॉन्ट्रैक्टर ठेकेदार इंश्योरेंस नहीं करता है, फेल हो जाता है, जो इंश्योरेंस करनी चाहिए कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के हिसाब से, लॉ के हिसाब से, हर उस केस में क्लाइंट का अधिकार है कि वो उस इंश्योरेंस को करा दे पैसे खर्च के, और जो भी खर्चा उस पर होता है कॉन्ट्रैक्टर के काम से जो बिल बनता है या बनेगा यही इसका इलाज है, क्योंकि जिम्मेदारी दोनों की है। कॉन्ट्रैक्टर नहीं करता है तो आपको करना पड़ेगा, काम आपका है, पैसे काट लीजिए, इतना ही सिंपल लैंग्वेज में कह सकते हैं। दोबारा पढ़ देता हूँ क्योंकि फाइनेंशियल इशू है। कॉन्ट्रैक्टर शैल फेल टू अफेक्ट एंड कीप इन फोर्स इंश्योरेंस refer to thereof or hereof or whatever other insurance which may be required to effect under terms of contract. Then you can say, and in every such case, client may effect and keep in force whatever such insurance and pay such premium or premiums as would be necessary for that purpose and from time to time deduct amounts so paid by client as aforesaid from whatever money is due or which may become due to contractor or recover same as debt due from contractor. Notification by contractor. It shall be duty of contractor to notify insurers of whatever insurance referred to in these clauses, any or whatever method or event which by terms of such insurances are required to be so notified, and contractor indemnify and keep indemnified client against all losses, demands, proceedings, costs, charges, and expenses whatsoever arising out of resulting from whatever default by contractor in complying with requirements of this clause, whether as a result of avoidance of such insurance or otherwise. आपको ठेकेदार को ड्यूटी बनता है कि वो इंश्योरर को नोटिफाई करे, सूचित करे टर्म्स के हिसाब से, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के हिसाब से, और क्लाइंट को बचा के रखे, जो भी खर्चे आते हैं वो करे, वो लॉसेस के हिसाब से हों, जो भी हों, उसमें क्लाइंट के ऊपर कुछ अनड्यू उसको भी अप्रूव कराना होगा. Where these clauses hereof require certain insurances to be affected with an insurer approved by client, or where certain other insurance is required to be affected under terms of contract, insurance shall be affected by contractor with one of following approved insurance company. So this is local, this is standard related. Just for information I am just giving you. It is not necessary. In your case it depends on which country you are working in, which are companies available here. It's only for information so that you can know what I am talking about, or this document is talking about. It's Qatar Insurance Company, Qatar General Insurance and Reinsurance Company, Khalij Insurance Company, Doha Insurance Company, or other Qatar Insurance Company whatsoever. Now, compliance with statutes. Contractor shall conform in all respect with provisions of whatever statute, ordinance or law and regulations or bylaws of whichever local or other duly constituted authority that may be applicable against all penalties and liability of every kind for breach of every such statute, ordinance or law, regulation or bylaw. जितने भी नियम, अधिनियम, कानून या रूल्स हैं उस एरिया में, वो सब पर कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को काम करना होगा, मानना होगा. जो भी उस काम में लगते हैं, चाहे वो काम परमानेंट है या टेम्पररी है, रूल्स के हिसाब से करना होगा. उनको मान्यता नहीं देने की ज़रूरत, वो मैंडेटरी हैं. और क्लाइंट को बचा के रखना होगा किसी भी पेनल्टी के खिलाफ, किसी भी और खर्चे के खिलाफ जो उस कानून के तोड़ने से, उल्लंघन से होता है. And payment of fees. Contractors shall give all notices and pay all fees required to be given or paid by every national or statute, ordinance or other law or whatever regulation or bylaw of whichever local or other duly constituted authority in relation to execution of works or of every such work, and by rules and regulations of all public bodies and companies whose property or right are affected or may be affected in whatever way by works or temporary works. सिंपल है, एक्सप्लेनेटरी है. आपको सारे खर्चे नोटिस देने बॉडी के हिसाब से, बॉडी के रेगुलेशन के हिसाब से, पब्लिक बॉडी के किसी भी काम पे जो देना है, टैक्स देना है, कुछ भी देना है, फीस देनी है, देनी होगी. सिंपल सी बात है, कोई इसमें बड़ी चीज you can say. Now, without prejudice to generality of this clause and without hereof and following God of contract to it, contract shall comply with Register of Commerce. Register of Commerce regulations or every regulation or ordinance having force of law in that country, for time being amending or reenacting same, under which all persons and companies Register of Commerce, persons or companies not entered in register कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग कर रहे हैं तो आपको अपनी रजिस्ट्रेशन वहाँ करानी होगी रजिस्टर ऑफ कॉमर्स रेगुलेशन के हिसाब से. सो सिंपल सी बात है, इसमें कोई हर कंट्री के अपने रूल होते हैं, उसके हिसाब से आपको फॉलो करना होगा. फॉजल्स, आप जानते हैं फॉजल्स क्या होते हैं, बड़ा मशहूर शब्द है. खाली फॉजल्स नहीं है, इसमें और भी है. फॉजल टाइटल दिया है, फॉजल एटसेट्रा. ऑल फॉजल्स coins, articles of value or antiquity and structures, as well as other remains or items or things of geological or archaeological interest discovered on site of absolute property of government, and contractor shall take reasonable precautions to prevent its workmen or workpersons or whatever other persons from removing or damaging whatever such article or thing, and shall immediately upon discovery thereof before removal acquaint engineer's representative of such discovery and carry out at expense of government engineers फॉसिल मिले, सिक्के मिले पुराने, या कोई ऐसी चीज़ मिली जो प्राचीन काल की हो, कोई स्ट्रक्चर मिला, कुछ भी मिला ज़मीन के नीचे से, जिसको आप पुरातत्व के मतलब का कह सकते हैं, तो उसमें क्लाइंट और कॉन्ट्रैक्टर की जिम्मेदारी है. उसमें दोनों के बीच में ये कहना होगा कि ये प्रॉपर्टी सरकारी है, देश की है या उस जगह की है, और उसमें सारी सावधानियां ठेकेदार को लेनी होंगी उसकी प्रोटेक्शन के लिए, जिससे कि कोई भी कारीगर, कोई भी कर्मी उसको ख़राब ना कर सके या उसको साइड से हटा ना सके. इसको जानने के बाद इसका कैसे हटाएं, जैसा इंजीनियर कहे वैसे हटाएं, वैसे माने, और ये सब rights and royalties. पेटेंट्स, राइट्स एंड रॉयल्टीज़, देखिए ये बहुत पुराने क्लॉजेस हैं. ये जानना जरूरी होता है कि आखिर ये क्यों बने होंगे और नए क्लॉज में क्या चेंज आ गया, बदलाव आ गया. पेटेंट्स, राइट्स एंड रॉयल्टीज. कॉन्ट्रैक्टर शैल सेव हार्मलेस एंड इंडेमनिफाई or for or on account of infringement of every patent rights, design, trademark or name or other protected rights in respect of every construction plant, machine work or material used for or in connection with works or temporary works, or either of them, and from and against all claims, demand, proceedings, damages, cost, changes, and expenses whatsoever in respect thereof. And other royalties, rent and other payments or compensation. Contractor shall save harmless and indemnified client from and against all claims and proceedings for or account of infringement of either patent, design, trademark or name of other protected rights in respect of construction plants, machine work or material used for in connection with works or temporary works, or either of them, and from and against all claims, demand, proceedings, damages, costs, charges, and expenses whatsoever in respect thereof, or in relation thereto. Contractor shall pay all tonnage and other royalties, rent, and other payments or compensations for getting stone, sand, gravel, clay, or other materials required for works or interference with traffic and adjoining property. All operations necessary for execution of works, all operations necessary for execution of works and for construction of whatever temporary works shall, so far as compliance with requirements of contract permits, be carried on so as not to interfere unnecessarily or improperly with public convenience or access to use and occupation of public or private roads and footpaths, or to or of properties, whether in possession of authority, or you can say client, or of some other person. And contractor shall harmless and indemnity and indemnify client in respect of all claims, demands, proceedings, damages, costs, charges, and expenses whatsoever arising out of or in relation to whatever such matters insofar as contractor is responsible therefore. Interference and traffic and joining properties. So it's very clear clause. Once again write it for clarification. All operations necessary for execution of works and for construction of every temporary work shall, so far as compliance with requirements of contract permits, be carried or as not to interfere necessarily of improperty with public convenience of or access to use and occupation of public and private roads and footpaths or to or properties whether in possession or client or any other whatever else person, and contractor shall save harmless and indemnify PWA in this case in respect of all claims, demands, proceedings, damages, costs, changes and expenses whatever arising out of or relation to whatever such matters insofar as contractor is responsible thereof. Extraordinary traffic. Contractor shall use every reasonable means to prevent whatever highways or bridges communicating with or on routes to site from being damaged or injured by whatever every traffic of contractor or some subcontractors, and in particular select routes, choose and use vehicles and restrict and distribute loads so that whatever such extraordinary traffic as shall inevitably arise from moving of plant and material from and to site should be limited as far as reasonably possible, and so that no unnecessary damage or injury may be occasioned to such highway. Spatial load. Should it be found necessary for contractor to move one or more loads of construction plant, machinery or pre-constructed units or parts of units of work over part of a highway or bridge, moving whereof is likely to damage certain highway or bridge, unless special protection or strengthening is carried out. Then contractor shall, before moving load onto such highway or bridge, give notice to engineer or engineer's representative. So to be moved and his proposals for protecting or strengthening said highway or bridge. Unless written within 14 days of receipt of such notice, engineer shall by encounter notice direct that such protection of strengthening is unnecessary. Contractor will carry out such proposals or any some modifications thereof that engineer shall require, and unless there is an item or items of bills of quantity for pricing by contractors of necessary works for protection or strengthening, aforesaid cost and expenses shall be paid by contractor. Settlement of extraordinary traffic claims. Settlement of extraordinary traffic claims if during carrying out of works or at whatever time thereafter contractor receives certain claims arising out of execution of works in respect of damage or injury to highways and so we can say again settlement of extraordinary traffic claims if during and carrying out of works at whatever time thereafter contractor receives certain claims arising out of execution of works in respect to damage or injury to highways or bridges shall immediately report same to engineers. Even so far as whatever such claims a part thereof shall in the opinion of engineer be due to whatever failure on part of contractor to observe and perform his obligations under the clause of this clause, then amount certified by engineer to be due to such failure shall be paid by contractor to government. Alright, then we can say further sometime I feel little monotonous, so I got some relief. Waterborne traffic, where nature of work is such that such as require use by contractor of waterborne transport. Foregoing provisions of this clause shall be construed as through highway included a lock, dock, sea, wall, or other structure. Other structure related to waterway and vehicle included craft and contractor contractor shall, in accordance with requirements of engineers, afford all reasonable opportunities for carrying out their work to every other contractor employed by client and their work persons, and to work persons of client and of every other duly constituted authorities who may be employed in execution on or near site of whatever work not included in contract which public authority may enter into connection with or ancillary to works. Supply of specified contractor shall, at its own expense, supply and provide all constructional plant, temporary works, materials both for temporary and permanent works, workers including supervision thereof, such transport to or from site, transport to and from site and in and about works and other items required to you can say, except where otherwise specified, contract shall at its own expense supply and provide all construction plant temporary works, materials both for temporary and permanent works, workers including supervision thereof, and other items, things of every kind required for construction, completion and maintenance of works. So you have to supply a plant, but whatever is required means there is no limit to that. Site should be kept clear of obstructions that are clause. Those who believe in this, there's no site to be kept clear of obstructions. Contractors shall all times keep site free from obstruction, and if directed by engineer or engineer's representative, store or dispose of every constructional plant from site, whatever wreckage or rubbish or temporary works no longer required. आपको साइट साफ रखने, क्लियर रखने, कोई ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन नहीं आनी चाहिए. Completion of works, at completion of works, contractor shall clear away and remove from site all construction plant. clearance of site. So we have done it on completion of works. Contractor shall clear away and remove from site all construction plants, surplus materials, rubbish and temporary works of every kind and leave whole of site and works clean and in a work and like condition. Plant, rubbish and building debris of whatever nature within 30 days after completion of works and or suspension of works for an indefinite period to transport such rubbish and debris to a location designed by relevant municipality. In event of contractor's non-compliance with this clause, a penalty of defined amount per day shall be imposed. Engineers then entitled to have such clearance carried out by others and to deduct such costs from whatever money is due or which may become due to contractor. In addition to such penalty, last payment certificate shall be withheld until contractor submits or classify cleaning works. Again I'm saying it's very important matter and we have to pay penalties we can recovered. So what do we say? Rates of wages. Contract shall pay rates of wages and observe hours and conditions of workers not less favorable than those established by agreement between employers or other recognized authorities and trade unions for similar trades or industries in district in which work is done, where this contract work to be carried out. Where there is no such established rates and conditions in trade or industry in district, established rates and conditions in other districts for similar trade or industries carried on under similar general conditions shall be adopted without prejudice to the monthly meetings of constitution. You can say where there are such established rates and conditions in trade or industry in district, then established rates and conditions in other districts for similar trades or industries carried on under similar general conditions shall be adopted without prejudice to then we can say where there are no such established vacancies one without prejudice to generality of provisions of this clause under the contractor shall be responsible for observance of terms of this subclause by doubt be discussed between contractor and appropriate government department or workers. Wage books. Well, wage books. Contractor shall keep proper wages book showing wages paid to workers in and about execution of contract, together with such other records as are required by statute, ordinance, law, regulation, or bylaw in force in country governing employment of workers, and shall be found bound whenever required to produce such wages book and other records for inspection of whatever person authorized by engineer. Workers to be members of registered trade unions. In compliance with clause, contractor shall also from time to time furnish to engineer such further detailed information and evidence as engineer may deem necessary in order to satisfy it that conditions of this clause have been complied with. Supply of workers. Supply of workers. Contractor shall use all diligence in arranging for a sufficient and suitable supply all times throughout contract of workers and personnel, and make its own arrangements for their recruitment, provided that contractors would not recruit or attempt to recruit its personnel and workers from amongst persons in service of client. Contract shall its own expense unless otherwise specified, pay all costs and charges for and make all arrangements in connection with recruitment, employment, supervision, transport, quarantine, housing and feeding, welfare and first aid and hospital services, camp administration and insurance of workers and personnel, and all other matters whatsoever, all of which shall be subject to statutes, ordinances, laws, regulations, and bylaws now in force, of which may be laid down in Parliament. Amen. So, importation of workers and personnel shall be subject to statutes, ordinances, laws, regulations, and bylaws in force from time to time, and no worker or personnel shall be imported by contractor without first obtaining necessary permits or passports from appropriate authorities. Repatriation. Contractor shall at his own cost be responsible for provision of transport to and from site for all times, and repatriation allowed employed under works and shall be responsible for suitable maintenance of all such persons who are being or about to be repatriated until they shall have left country or district as case may be, and in default of PWA. For suitable maintenance of all such persons who are being or about to be repatriated and they shall have left country or district as case may be, and in default of client may repatriate and maintain such persons and forever. Very nice. Contract बहुत क्या रखेंगे? that's an important point. शांति बनाए रखेंगे क्या हम? बात तो आएगी ही. शांत काम तभी होगा, शांति होगी, अत्यंत आवश्यक है शांति बनाए रखना. Contractor shall at all times during progress of works take all requisite precautions and use its best endeavors to ensure all its worker and personnel comply with statutes, ordinances, regulations and bylaws in force in district, and so as to prevent accidents or whatever righteous or unlawful behavior or conduct by or amongst workers and other employed on or by in connection with works and other force. Contractors shall at all times during progress of works take all requisite precautions and use its best endeavors to ensure all workers and personnel comply with statutes, ordinances, laws, regulations, and bylaws in force in district, and so as to prevent accidents or unrighteous or unlawful behavior or conduct by or amongst workers and other employed on or in connection with works, and for preservation of peace and protection of inhabitants and security of all property on or in neighborhood or site, but contractor shall not be entitled to institute whatever site any fault on that. You can say can start security of property or neighborhood of site, preservation of peace and protection of inhabitants and security of all property or on a neighborhood of site, but contract shall not be entitled to institute whatever force of police, nor shall be interfere with government policy. Than permitted in accordance with government regulation. Import, sell, give, barter or suffer, barter or otherwise dispose of every liquid, every alcoholic liquor or drugs, or permit or suffer whatever such importation, sale, gift, I said, government regulation, import, sell, give, barter, or otherwise dispose of whatever liquid, whatever alcoholic liquor or drugs, or permit or suffer whatever such importation, sales, gift, barter, or disposal by subcontractors, agents, or employees. In all dealings with their workers for time being employed or in connection with works have due regard to all recognized festivals and religious or other customs. Health. We are now back to some point. Due precautions must be resorted to or taken by contractor and Health. Due precautions must be taken by contractors and at its own cost, unless otherwise specified in collaboration with and the requirements of local health authorities to ensure that medical staff, first aid equipment, and stores, sick bay, and suitable ambulance service are available at camps or housing and on site at all times throughout period of for all arrangements for its workmen and everything concerning procurement and employment of workers. Contractors shall be required to enforce in district. Period of contract having the regard for statutes, ordinances, bylaws, and regulations, laws in force in that place, and to approval of client. Such we can say again, very important point. Contract shall be required to provide and maintain its own cost all camps, housing, and to accommodate properly its personnel and workers for period of contract having due regard for statutes, ordinances, laws, regulations, bylaws in force in district and the approval of client. Such camps and housing shall not be of this clause shall apply to all workers and personnel employed by contractor or its subcontractors, and all costs, charges, and expenses, whatever that may be incurred or spent by contractor, and all risks involved in giving effect to provisions of this clause, including all insurances, are deemed to be included and covered in rates. And finally, in rates you can say, or lump sums inserted by contractor in bills of quantities, temporary works without prejudice to generality of in such form and at such intervals as engineer may prescribe, showing supervisory staff and numbers of several classes of workers from time to time employed by contractor on site, and such information respecting constructional plant as engineer's representative may require. In this. This is clause title, materials and workmanship. All materials and workmanship shall be or at all or whatever of such places. Contract shall provide such assistance, instruments, machines, workers and materials as normally required for examining, measuring and testing every work or whatever work, and quality, weight or quantity of whatever material used, and supply samples of materials before incorporation in works. Thereof is clearly intended by or provided for in specification or bill of quantities, but if not done, if not then at cost of, if not cost of client. Cost of test. Cost of test. Cost of making whatever test shall be borne by contractor if such test is clearly intended by or provided for in specification or bill of quantities, and in cases only of a test load, under load, or if a test to ascertain whether design of whatever finished or partially finished work is appropriate for purposes it was intended to fulfill, is particularized in specification or bill of quantity in sufficient detail to enable contractor to price or allow for same in tender. Cost of test not provided for. Cost of test not provided for if certain test is ordered by engineer which is either not so intended by or provided for, or in cases above mentioned is not so particularized though so intended or provided for, is ordered by engineer to be carried out by an independent person at whatever place other than site or place of manufacture. Cost of such test shall be borne by contractor if test shows workmanship or material not to be in accordance with provisions of contract or engineer's instruction, but otherwise by authority, by client. Access to site. Access to site. Now, access to site is whoever person authorized by it shall at all times have access for works and contract or works. Engineering person authorized by him shall at all times have access to works and to site and to workshops and places where work is being prepared. Whence material manufactured articles of machinery are being obtained for works, and contractor shall afford every facility of work before covering up. It's very important one. Examination of work being covering up before that. No work shall be covered, no work shall be covered up or put out of view without approval of engineer for engineer or its representative to examine and measure whatever work which is about to be covered up or put out of view, and to examine foundations before permanent work is placed thereon. Contractor shall give due notice to engineer's representative whenever whatever such work or foundation is or are ready or about to be ready for examination, and uncovering and making openings. Uncovering and making openings. Well, I think I have to take a few minutes because signals are also down little, and be back in a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you can read